Chapter 8. Let the Rain Fall. Caught Out. Serious POV. Today was the day. Tonight was the night. His palms were clammy, resting on his bare thighs, worrying his lip between his teeth. Remus had kindly found a rubbery mat for him to kneel on in the hard stone of his bathtub, and he stared at it steadfastly as the older man wandered about the bathtub, preparing their scene. "How are you feeling, Bug?" "A little nervous," Sirius said, lifting his head to watch as Remus leaned against the cabinetry, his chest bare, wiry hair and silvery scars on display. An afternoon with Remus had quickly become one of his favorite things. The pattern of reading or listening to an album together and then negotiating scenes. It brought a happiness to his being he hadn't ever experienced with anyone else. The man ruffled his already messy hair and smiled softly at him as Sirius asked for the third time, "Are you sure you want to do this?" "I am." Remus tapped 2 fingers on the sink and lifted a glass of water to his lips. "You seem worried you'll like this. Normally, it's the opposite." Sirius frowned as he contemplated Remus's words, knowing they held some truth. "I guess so." "Because you think you shouldn't?" "It's like you can see inside my brain," Sirius whined, dropping his head forward until it could rest on the cool marble of the bath's rim. "It feels like something I should be ashamed of. Like it isn't normal to want you to..." Feeling his cheeks turn fiery, he rolled his forehead over the smooth surface and breathed out a deep sigh before he sat up straight again. Remus's eyes were fixed on him, free of judgment. "We've talked about this before, when we started this. Are you worried about James would think?" "A little bit, I guess," Sirius mumbled. "When I was upset that you might not want me, that we might not be compatible, he said that it was a good thing that you were so disciplined because you might be looking for a slave or to be into this sort of thing." "Okay," Remus sighed. "But you know you aren't the only person that likes this, don't you?" "But..." Sirius barely opened his mouth before Remus raised a sharp eyebrow at him. "But nothing, Bug. You want to try this because it gets you hard when you think about it. You want to try this because you are in the midst of learning what you do and don't like. He's your brother, yes, but what we do is between us. And if you want him to know about anything we do, you're free to tell him, but I won't be spilling any of your secrets." Thank you." Sirius held up a hand out for Remus, reeling him in until he could press gentle kisses across his knuckles, up his bare arm until his face was within reach. "I want to do this." "How do you want to do it?" The question was a little redundant, seeing as Sirius was already naked and kneeling in a bath, but he appreciated that Remus was letting him run the show. The man had dropped to his knees on the bath mat, mirroring Sirius's position, and met his eyes resolutely. "With you naked too?" he began in a whisper, closing his eyes as he recited the image he'd created for himself. "And then I want... on my chest first, and then my neck, over my cock, not in my mouth. Would you keep hold of me?" "Show me," Remus murmured, encouraging his eyes to flutter open with his thumb, tracing over the thin skin there. "Do you want to be held, or do you want to be held still?" "Held still." Sirius reached for his hand and led it to his scalp, letting Remus tangle his long fingers through the locks and gasping as he pulled sharply, his head jerking backwards and throat exposed. He couldn't help but moan when he bit at the taut skin, leaving the imprints of sharpened scissors behind. "We can do that," Remus reassured him, always reassuring him. "What about after?" "After?" "Mm-hmm," Remus hummed, kissing him sweet and slow while he held him in place. "Do you want to get straight in the shower? Or do you want the plug put in? You could draw out the experience and play for a little while." "The plug?" the smaller man squeaked, squeezing his eyes shut and shaking his head. "No, I don't think so. If I like it, then if I'm allowed, could I come?" "Absolutely." Remus kissed him again. Can I get off as well, or do you want me to wait? That took him off guard. He hadn't realized that maybe Remus would get off from showering him in. You think you will? He asked in disbelief, watching as the man exhaled a sharp laugh through his nose. I will, Remus nodded, unabashed in his statement, not even ducking his head at his confession. I've done this before and enjoyed it. I don't doubt that I will with you. If you don't like it, it's not a problem, but don't think that this is only going to please you. Okay, Sirius gulped. Then maybe you can get yourself off watching me? And the idea of that brought his cock to life, thickening just a little and pulsing with heat as he imagined himself dripping wet and knelt before Remus, thoroughly owned by him. Imagining the man stroking his cock, Sirius matched his pace until he was coated in cum, messy and wet and happy. Watching you, watching me, watching you? Remus quirked a lip. Sure, Bug. Please, that. Sirius sighed happily as the hand in his hair massaged his scalp, goosebumps rising to the skin as he fantasized. And then we can shower together, messy and then clean, together. Remus hummed a note that Sirius had learned meant yes, absolutely, and then shifted in their embrace. Standing, the man looked at him for a long moment and said, Are you ready? One deep breath later, Sirius was sure. Yes. At that, Remus began to shed the rest of his clothes, one mismatched sock and then the other, followed quickly by his corduroys, and then he was blessedly naked. He'd clearly been speaking the truth, because his cock was a little fat already, heavy and flushed between his thick thighs. It never failed to make his mouth water and drop open just a tad. Taking it in his hand, he stepped closer to Sirius and stroked once, twice, then held it aloft. He gulped, closing his eyes and taking a deep, fortifying breath and letting it go. This is what you've wanted since you knew it was a thing that existed, he told himself. Remus will take care of you. Remus always takes care of you. When he opened his eyes and whimpered the word, please, a steady stream erupted from the tip of Remus's cock, hitting his chest and running in rivulets down his body. As he gasped, Sirius realized that this was both nothing and everything like he had hoped, and he tilted his head back as much as the older man would allow, so that Remus could wet his throat also. Hand drifting from his thigh up to his cock, he grasped it loosely and began to stroke himself, using Remus's piss as lubrication. When the sensation of warm fluid hitting his body ceased, he looked up to see his Mooney mirroring him, wanking slowly with his lips grasped between his teeth, rubbing his palm over the head of his cock. Sirius catalogued his body, watching as the muscles in his thighs trembled just a little from the pleasure, seeing the small beads of pre-cum appear and disappear, smoothed along the shaft, which was rapidly darkening. Do you want more, Bug? His voice was husky, too, the way it lowered when he was turned on, rasping and brilliant, and it was like Sirius had a Pavlovian response, working his cock harder in response and groaning. More. Good boy. Remus slowed his pace, returning his grip to the base of his cock and directing it at his crotch, chuckling lowly when Sirius shivered at the sensation of the clear liquid hitting his sensitive genitals. Does that feel good? Having your Mooney coat you in piss? Marking you up as his? Yours, Sirius gasped, hips jerking as he raised up from his position to be closer to Remus, getting closer and closer by the second to exploding. All yours. So good, Mooney. The steady stream turned to a staccato rhythm as Remus's bladder began to run dry, the man's eyes half shut as he basked in the pleasure. You look so good, Bug. Taking everything I have, aren't you? Such a good little bug. Just for me. Sirius knew he was being egged on, that Remus could see just how close to the edge he was. Even so, he let it happen, let the image of Remus wanking in front of him and the residual pleasure of what they had just done together push him to the precipice, cum spurting up over his chest, washed away by the final few trickles from Remus's cock. "Oh, look at you," Remus breathed, and Sirius watched as he fucked his fist and moaned loudly. The picture of debauchery. "So pretty, wet and messy little thing." "Mooney, Mooney, Mooney," Sirius babbled, edging closer in the tub until Remus's cock was nearly in his mouth. "Want you to come on me, on my face again. Please, please, will you?" Not once taking his eyes from him, Remus let loose a shout and began to come, his fist tightening in Sirius's dark tresses, and shooting his load all over Sirius's face, striping him from chest to temple. He felt well and truly marked, and leaned forward to catch the last escaping droplets in his mouth, tasting the faintest tang of urine with it. Swallowing, he leaned back and smiled up at the man who held his heart in his hands. When fingers released their grip on his scalp, instead smoothing over the skin of his cheek, Sirius smiled and peppered Remus's forearm with kisses. "Thank you," he mumbled, suckling at the cum-covered thumb the man pressed into his mouth. "Turns out I am absolutely into that." Remus let out a little laugh, hands dropping to Sirius's armpits and pulling him up to stand carefully and helping step out of the slippery tub, not at all worried about Sirius's sticky wet skin pressing against his. No, instead, he held him close and cuddled him gently, kissing every inch of dry skin he could find before he set about shepherding them behind the glass partition that housed his shower. With warm water washing over him, Sirius shivered in Remus's arms, the memory, the sensation induced, and the feeling of Remus wrapped so closely around him blissful. He sank further into the candy floss-like sensation in his head, following his Mooney's instructions as soon as they were given. "Snugglebug?" Remus murmured. "Can you look at me for a moment, please?" Sirius tipped his head back onto Remus's shoulder and blinked sleepily at him, humming as a gentle hand carted through his wet hair, rubbing a thumb over the hinge of his jaw. "Mooney?" he asked, eyes falling shut as soon as Remus's met his. "Aren't you my good little bug?" the man cooed. "You've gone under for me. You don't need to worry. I've got you." Sirius didn't really understand what was being said to him, but he understood Remus's soft and loving tone, the gentle press of hands to skin as the man crouched down and washed him, much like he had that first night they shared together. Lifting one foot and then the other, he giggled as Remus tickled the bottoms of his feet and steadied himself on the man's head. He pressed forward into the little kisses Remus covered his torso with when he rose, his chin soapy with the remnants of the shower gel he'd massaged into Sirius's skin. When the man's soap-slick hand encircled his throat, he released a quiet moan of encouragement and leaned into it, pouting a tad when the hand disappeared with a quiet chuckle. Butting his head into Remus's collarbone, he nuzzled forward and bit into the muscle of the man's chest, worrying it gently with his teeth and then pulling back to survey his work, seeing the purple mark blooming in tanned skin and grinning up at the man he'd marked as his own. Bitey bug, does whatever a bitey bug does," Remus sang into his ear, tickling his sides and then turning the water off and wrapping him in a fluffy towel. "I'm so proud of you, Sirius. You did so well for me. I'm so pleased with you. My best boy." Those words made him so happy. Remus was proud of him. He'd done well. He was floaty and happy, and Remus was there, keeping him safe and warm and being proud of him. "Good morning," Remus said quietly, edging closer into Sirius's careful hands as they swept across his chest. "Look at you, up before the sun." Sirius merely hummed, refusing to open his eyes just yet. On account of their rather early night, he'd woken up obscenely early, entertaining himself by running his hard cock into Remus's thigh and twisting wiry hair between his fingers. That was, at least, until Remus came awake. "How are you feeling this morning?" Remus coaxed, and he begrudgingly opened his eyes to squint at the man in the dim light of the digital clock. Good, Sirius mumbled, allowing Remus to turn in his grip, but pouting when the thigh sat between his own was removed, all friction to his aching cock disappearing, the boy whining at the loss. Come back. Remus rolled on top of him, bracing his weight on his forearms and gazing down at Sirius, his look both adoring and arousing. In moments like this, Remus was an idol that he worshipped, adoring him with soft kisses and gentle touches. Everything was soft and sweet, and 1,000 miles away from what a person might expect of this man, weathered and scarred. To many, he would seem broken, but Sirius knew. He was not Humpty Dumpty. Remus had put himself back together, learnt and grown, and was now a man worthy of Sirius's worship. A man who deserved good things. A man who exuded such energy and grace that Sirius felt grateful to even be in his orbit. Opening his mouth to allow Remus's tongue access, he ran kind hands over the skin of his back, half convinced that he knew every inch of this man, had already mapped his skin to an extent that he could direct a more skilled man than he to recreate it in painting, in charcoal, on a canvas for the world to marvel at. Kissing was most certainly a practice he thought he'd improved in since he and Remus had embarked upon their relationship, and it was a practice he'd come to treasure. This closeness, this pleasure was different to everything else they had done together. Even without expectation, the intimacy that kissing Remus in the small hours of the morning brought forth was to be treasured. I could do this forever, Sirius whispered when Remus pulled back, the man settling on his side playing half-heartedly with the ends of Sirius's long locks. You make me so happy. I know it's only been a month since we started this, but I feel like I could spend a lifetime with you and never be bored or tired of you. Sweet bug, Remus whispered, pressing a kiss to Sirius's forehead. You make me happy too. I didn't tell you before how much I wanted you, how I hoped we'd be compatible, even when I was trying so hard to resist you for my own sense of self-preservation. I knew it would be pointless. Wild and brutally beautiful, full of nervous energy and dying to please someone, anyone. I feel lucky that you want an old man like me, that you see me so clearly. You're all I want. Sirius pulled him closer, burrowing into his throat and kissing along the tender column of skin. And you're so good, for me, and to everyone around you. I fear that you put me on a pedestal, Remus murmured. I'm just like you, Bug. I get angry, and I get scared, and I get sad. Sirius thought for a moment, digesting Remus's words and concluding. Maybe I do, but I don't think it's unfounded. I've seen evil, true evil. What my family have done, what my family believe. It's horrifying. They have wealth and power, and they choose to wield it as a weapon, to hurt those that do not follow the same ways as them. Bug, Remus interrupted him. Just because they are bad, it doesn't mean that I'm good. I know, Sirius agreed, but twisted to meet Remus's eyes, wanting to truly convey how he saw the older man. I know that it doesn't make you good, but it's clear from your lifestyle and your successful business that you have maybe a fraction of the wealth they have, yet you share in none of their ideals. Even when you're asked to hurt people, you do it with kindness. You take care even when it is not deserved, and you have worked harder than anyone I know to be good. Truly, you value people and not what they can do for you. Perhaps. Remus sounded a little overwhelmed, and the look on his face was as though he'd been stuck, even as he spoke quietly to Sirius. But you owe yourself the same pedestal. Not only did you escape them, but you grew up in that environment. It would have been so easy for you to follow them. From what you've told me, I know you to be brave and kind and gentle, especially when they are not. You could have tried to burn the world down, force them to suffer, and bask in their pain. But you didn't. It's enough to be free. Sirius watched carefully, opening his mouth once his thoughts were all lined up and organized in his head. Besides, I care too much about Reggie to ruin them. Reggie? My little brother. Sirius let a little laugh free at the confused look on the man's face. He went to Harrow and then Eton, like me, but he fell into the sort of friends my family would have preferred for me to have, rather than Jamie. I took hits for him for years, protected him as much as I could, but in the end, he was just like them. Quieter, maybe, but my final straw, the night I left, they wanted me to marry Narcissa, and I refused, told them that it wasn't that I had found a suitable wife elsewhere. No, it was that I enjoyed the company of men instead. They didn't take it well. Neither did Reggie, and I couldn't take it any longer. I couldn't continue ruining myself for the sake of someone already lost. I'm so sorry, Remus breathed, covering him with kisses. Do you know if he's still with them? I don't know anything about them, apart from my father's death, and only because that made the news. It did? Money talks, Mooney. Clearly. Remus pulled him closer to resume their kisses, the severity of their conversation fading away into nothingness as they savored each other. He didn't notice that the sun had begun to rise until the room was tinged with shades of pink, the shadow from Remus's eyelashes changing direction, his hair turning from simple brown to a myriad of shades that captured Sirius's attention enough to distract from their kisses. It's so beautiful, he spoke, eyes fixed on the orange of the rising sun. I can see why you don't have blinds in here. Remus dropped his face into Sirius's neck, mouthing at the hickeys already there. A nuisance in summer, though. The room becomes an oven, and I end up awake earlier than I'd like to be. Sirius held the man close, passing one hand down over Remus's downy curls and twisting them between gentle fingers. That may be annoying, but look at that. Beautiful, Remus mumbled, never lifting his head to take in the view. Absolutely beautiful. You're not even looking, Sirius whined, twisting until he disrupted Remus enough for the man to sit back on his haunches and gaze at Sirius reproachfully. I don't need to look, Bug. The sunrise is beautiful. The boy in my bed is beautiful. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Come back here, Sirius said, stretching leisurely and tensing his stomach so the little muscle he did have was displayed. And give me my good morning treat? You can ask nicer than that. Remus smirked at him, eyes roaming over gloriously bare skin. Come on, baby bug. Ask nicely, and I'll give you what you want. Please, Remus? Sirius fluttered his eyelids and reached out for the man. Please come back down here and look after me. I'll be your good boy, I promise. Remus shook his head, a small smile on his face and heat in his eyes. My good boy, With that, he leant down and kissed Sirius passionately, lust flaring up in Sirius's groin and making him moan and squirm beneath the man. Held still, he fought for the dominance of their embrace and failed, but laughed while he tried. This tryst was not serious. There was no need to be stoic or composed. Here, in Remus's bed, Sirius could be wholly himself, and could act however he liked as long as Remus let him. Would you like to go on a date with me? Sirius asked nervously, buttering his toast while Remus stirred brown sugar into his porridge. Remus set the wooden spoon down on the counter, turning to face Sirius with a pensive look on his face. I guess we haven't really done that, have we? If you don't want to, I'd love to. Remus cut him off, wrapping him up in careful arms and holding him close. What would you like to do? I don't know. Sirius blushed, bashful all of a sudden. You expect me to believe you've never imagined yourself on a date? That you haven't dreamed up this exact scenario? Well, Sirius laughed when Remus tickled his sides and tried to loose himself from his grasp. I always wanted to do it properly, even though I was rebelling. We could go to a fancy restaurant and drink posh wine, even though I hate it, and then I could pretend like I'm not going to put out, and we can laugh about it when I inevitably do. That does sound lovely. Remus smiled softly at him. How about we go out next Sunday? Okay. Sirius smiled up at him and gnawed on the corner of his toast. Where? I'll work out the details, okay? Doing a little happy dance forward into Remus's arms, Sirius voiced his agreement and cemented their plans. Come on then, Sirius said, voice like lead. Tell me all about your mystery woman. James blushed, caught out in the open of their living room after a week of fanciful avoidance. It's a guy, actually. Oh. Sirius's mouth popped open in surprise. James had had a couple of trysts with men before, but never anything serious. And he'd certainly never tried to hide it. All right, then. Tell me about your mystery man. I can't, James said, a pained look on his face. Not yet, at least. It's not worth mentioning if it doesn't go well, and he'd rather keep it under the radar for now. And that was just, well, to be honest, it was odd. James was a wear your heart on your sleeve type of bloke, and he had been since they were young boys in a dormitory whispering about crushes under the guise of darkness. He'd never once turned down a chance to gush about a potential suitor, let alone someone he was seeing seriously enough to stay overnight multiple times. Unless... Do I know them? The silence was telling enough. That's a yes, then, Sirius said to the stoic man sat across from his perch on the coffee table. Eaton? Uni? Eaton. James cleared his throat. You'd know him if you saw him, but you wouldn't necessarily approve. Says who? You? Sirius gaped at him, a few names he wouldn't approve of springing to mind. Jamie, we aren't the same people that we once were. We've matured. God knows that I cringe thinking of the things we said or did at school. I promise I won't judge whoever it is. James gulped. Not yet, okay? It's new, and it's different to you and Remus, and Lily and I are still spending time together. It's complicated. Lily knows? Sirius checked. You're not fucking over our boss or anything, right? God, no. She knows. It's just play between us, and she is a hell of a dom, straight out of my fantasies. But she isn't interested in a relationship, and I was happy that she was upfront with me about that. It's strictly play, and my other partner is aware of the dynamic. All right, Sirius acquiesced. You're being safe? And they're treating you right? It started out rocky, but yes, he's very nice in his own way. Sirius snickered at the faraway look in his brother's eyes. You did always like them mean? So mean, the other boy breathed, and Sirius stood, still laughing, and left James to his fantasy. Remus POV. He drifted in and out of his daydreams, shaking his head to clear it from the memory on Sirius on his knees for him. Sirius laid out in his bed, Sirius giggling around a mouthful of toast that very morning. Earth to Remus! Sirius snapped her fingers in front of his face, jolting him out of his stupor. Your sandwich is getting cold. Oh. Remus picked up the chunky construction with 2 hands and scanned the spreadsheet before him as he ate. This is good, he commented around a mouthful. Would you like to try that again without your fish fingers in your mouth? This looks good. He took a heavy swallow from his can of pop. 2 weeks of food, and it's coming to a point that it could be independently profitable. The members' offers have certainly gotten a fair amount of abuse. Jenny's had more than their fair share of arancini, Jesus, they could float on an island on the amount of rice they've eaten. Still, it's good publicity. She glanced up from her computer screen. Sparks the interest of paying customers. And they don't need to know they get it for free, do they? I guess not. I'm impressed. Remus sighed, leaning back in his chair and kicking his feet up. James is doing a good job. That he is, Lily agreed with him, matching his relaxed posture with a raised eyebrow. So's your boy. Remus agreed. Good with the customers and his hands. Oh, I had a much more visual confirmation of that than I expected just last week. She smirked at him, and Remus sat forward at her suggestive tone. So did Pete, poor sod. What? He asked carefully. Well, you see, Remus, poor Pete caught the moment you came down your boy's throat in the alley on CCTV. She laughed at the immediate fire he knew had taken over his face. And since you went home for the evening shortly afterwards, it was me he brought it to. Couldn't tell it was you at first, not until I pointed it out to him. Ah, he cleared his throat. You see, I really don't want to know the ins and outs, she mused. I've already seen the muted version. Listen, the whole point of us having rooms is that we can debauch our guests in private. I know that, but Remus, the boy was on his break. Exactly, he exclaimed, pushing back from the desk and pacing next to it. It wasn't planned, Lils. I was having a cig and he just appeared and... Oh, trust me, the look on your face told me it wasn't planned. I just think that we shouldn't fuck the staff while they're actually on the clock. Remus sighed, knowing there was no way out of it. Look, you're right, but it wasn't planned, and he clearly didn't know there was a camera out there. I'd forgotten about it myself. Can we agree not to mention it to him, please? He'd be mortified, and he's just starting to be confident in asking for the things he wants. I can see that, Lily muttered sarcastically, and Remus couldn't stop the sharp look that he shot her, brewing with overprotectiveness for his boy. He's mine, Lily, he warned her. I won't have you making him feel bad for circumstances outside of his control. I wouldn't, she said, her voice softer now. Her amusement had begun to pass. It's barely worth mentioning to him, is it? And I think he's good for you. You love having someone to take care of. I bet you go all daddy-dom, don't you? Did you coach him through his first time? Was it good? Fuck off. He shot back at her good-naturedly, closing his eyes tightly as her expression transformed into something like victory. You still haven't shagged him? It's been a month, Ree. Right. Well, Remus broke off as she cackled and clapped like a demented sea lion. Fuck off. He's learning the ropes and exploring, and it's all very good. A month! Oh, all right, Evans. You can get fucked. It's none of your business, and we both know that sex doesn't just boil down to penetration. She watched him over her cup of tea, sipping calmly. You really like him, don't you? Yes, Remus sighed, collapsing back into his chair. I really like him, and his stupidly attractive everything. Tick all your boxes? Most of them, he confirmed, thinking back to the time where he worried they wouldn't be compatible at all. He's so good and eager to please. She hummed, directing her attention back to her computer. I can tell. Again, fuck off. He smiled while he said the words, this time, knowing it was his turn to taunt her. Anyways, what about you and James, Sirius said that he thought he was seeing someone else. He is, she confirmed. You know how I am. He did, which was the only reason he felt it safe to bring it up. She wasn't much for monogamy, or relationships at all, really. Do you know who it is he's seeing? Some kid from the year below them at school, apparently. I told him as long as he's using condoms, I don't care much about where he sticks his dick, only to come to me if he had any problems with our sort. Remus contemplated asking for details on the mystery man Sirius wanted to know more about, but he knew it wasn't his place, nor Lily's to divulge James's secrets. As long as you're happy. Oh, I am. At Lily's satisfied grin, he gave a light laugh and rose from his seat. I'll be on the floor if you need me. Oh, please, she called at his retreating back. We both know that you're going to pester your boy at the bar.